Okay, so we are in business. Philosophy 4900. Make sure it's in the right classroom. Whew. Um, this is week 13. I do want to make sure you know that, hey, this semester is coming to a close for those graduating. I bet you're getting excited. Um, make sure that you get the assignments turned in because week 16, those assignments, you can't be late. Because there's the end of the semester and I've got to do all the grades and I have to submit them to the university. At the end of the semester, we can't have late assignments. So for week 16, you can't turn anything in late because it won't be accepted. So make sure you turn those in on time. Let me see. I think I've covered everything else we need to go through for right now, so we can start the lecture. I did have a couple of videos I wanted to show you today, but now that we're back to using two computers because of Zoom, I might just show them Wednesday instead when we're all on Zoom and not having some of you in class. I think that will be easier that way. Okay, so let me get this going. Here we go. Okay, so now we're talking about changes to the workplace. If you recall back, the Industrial Revolution, that's where we got the locomotive. We call that a train, but the locomotive, that's where we got mass manufacturing. Before that, most manufacturing was done at bespoke level, job shop level. But with the Industrial Revolution, we began to get into repetitious manufacturing and continuous manufacturing, which is like a production line. Okay. Machines, they took over the competitive advantage that farming once had. You see, before the Industrial Revolution, most of the population lived in the country. They worked the fields. However, the Industrial Revolution created more jobs in the cities, and people migrated from the rural areas into the cities for those jobs. Housing became apartment buildings, and apartments aren't new. They're in the archaeological ruins in Rome and in the Mediterranean and places like that. You see apartment buildings that are 2,000-3,000 years old in the ruins. They're not necessarily still using them as apartment buildings, but we know that they had apartment buildings. Restaurants, because most people didn't have a kitchen in the cities. There were little restaurants where you could get fast food. That's not a modern invention. They had that back in ancient Rome. Okay. But that competitive advantage that farming and agriculture held, now the manufacturing sector was taking it. So what has taken the place in the machines of the Industrial Revolution? We don't use a cotton gin like we did. We have new equipment for it. We don't use the same means of production. That was the entry level into industry. We've progressed, what, 150 years or so from there till now. So we're not using the same exact machines. We're using computers, 3D printing, which there's actually something now in manufacturing called additive manufacturing. Normally, manufacturing has been subtractive, which is you take a CNC machine, you cut things down, you put it on a lathe, you remove material to shape the metal into the object you need. Now we're using that still, but we've also added additive manufacturing where we use 3D printing with, instead of plastic, it'd be metal. And so they can make a new part for your car that's got the tubes and the channels and the compartments already built into it when the engineering specifications are so specific that to do subtractive manufacturing isn't going to give you the end result that you need. You can do additive. And there's a way you do a combination of both. And so we do that. There's social media apps now are a big thing in business. Remote working. Think about this, because of the internet, because of the new computers and phones and tablets and all the devices and technology we have, people don't even have to show up to the office at times now. There are some jobs that are 100% online. I've been an adjunct for 2.5 years. I just started teaching on campus last fall. Before that, it was all online. I lived down in Texas at the time. We're able to do that. So that is some of that competitive advantage shifting. Vios, we were talking about shifting competitive advantages before class. This is another form of how competitive advantage shifts. Why do we want to hold on to the old ways of doing things, the old machines, when there are newer, better, and more efficient ways of doing things now? Of course, we should move forward. That's called progress, innovation. We're going to talk specifically about remote employment. Byers and Stanberry pointed out that telecommuting, which is remote employment, has increased in popularity since the 1970s. Wow, think about this. What happened in the 70s? The computers started showing up more. Now, they were still pretty massive, but we also had something else. Our telecommunication systems began to become more robust and complex. Phones. People were able to work call center work from their home. That was one of the very first things. Education changed. Before, you used to have to go to a university. Well, before there was online education, there was correspondence school. And you would get your books and your assignments. You'd read and study. You'd listen to audio. And then you would do the assignments and mail them in. Your professor would grade them. And so that was an innovation. But that was replaced also when the internet became viable. And now there's online education. Technology such as the internet and better personal computers have made this a viable solution for many workers and employers. Organizational intranet has facilitated this shift. What's an intranet? We know what internet is, but an intranet is like the internet, but it's contained within that organization. All right. So it's an infrastructure. Cleary has an infrastructure. We have an intranet. Okay, when we all go into Canvas, well, we access it through the internet, but we're now tapping into the Cleary University intranet when we do that. Not just anybody can access that. You've got to have the right credentials to sign in. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to submit your work. And a lot of organizations use something very similar. In the US, around 4 million employees telecommute. That's a substantial amount, 4 million. These are people that work directly from home. But that number gets even larger when we think about some of the online gigs, the gig economy. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit, but I could freelance on Fiverr. This is a graph that shows the percentage of employers offering telework options by nations, okay? In the US, we're at 90%. 90% of employers do offer some form of telework. China is 85%. India is 77%. The UK, 72%. France is 71%. And Germany, 71%. Okay, now, is this because Germany doesn't agree with telecommuting? No. It just, some of it is also just society and culture. It may not be as open to telecommuting as the US has become. So it's not, we're not downing Germany or France or the UK, but it's a different culture. Another technological advance that has helped telecommuting has been video service, such as FaceTime, Skype, and Zoom. I'm on Zoom right now with some of our students. We are on Zoom every Wednesday as a class. This has allowed functional teams to be located from around the world. You can source now these people from all over the globe. When I was going to Walden University to work on my doctorate, I had colleagues, students who are my colleagues, classmates, all around the world. And we would work on projects together, and we'd have to take into account the time difference, but we were able to work on things as a unit. using technology. This has also been used as a recruitment tool when hiring candidates. And I've got to get used to these glasses because the screen is not quite clear. It's a different prescription. So what they do is the organizations will offer some positions will be remote. Sometimes you can get hired and you can actually request to work specific hours remotely. Then smartphone technology has also contributed to this change through better text messaging, email features, and apps that permit video conferencing. I once used my phone as a hotspot, had the Zoom going on my computer in my car. In my car, I had a stand for the computer, driving through traffic, doing a class, a seminar for one of my classes, because I was running late and I had to get started. So I was able to do it. Now, you got to be real careful when you're doing that, obviously, but think about that. That's something that could never happen before. You can actually video conference with people on your computer, in your car, on your phone, on your tablet. So we become more mobile as people, which has impacted how we work. Now, let's look at the benefits of telecommuting. Your textbook noted that both employers and employees benefit from this modern approach to work. The organizational benefits include a larger talent pool. You can now reach people as far as a talent pool globally. Beneficial during the pandemic. I still was able to go to school and work as an adjunct during the lockdown. Well, during the last part of the lockdown there, at least, but because I was able to do it remotely. You find that the employees will call in the sick. Let me try that sentence again. Didn't work. You'll find that there is less absenteeism when people work remotely. They're not calling in sick as much. You find you have more productive employees at times. You have a low-cost expansion avenue. We need to expand our department. Well, we don't have to build extra space to accommodate the new staff. We put them remote. So organizations can grow without increasing their overhead significantly. Now, local staff, this refers to if I have a company and I've got clientele in India, I can actually source people to work remotely for my call center to service that area from the local population. So now you can actually have people that are fluent in the language and the dialect, because just like in other countries, not everybody speaks the same dialect in India. In the Philippines, there's about 1,000 different dialects, and that's a small little country. More benefits now let's look at how the employee benefits. You got less money you're spending on fuel to commute to work. You have more flexibility. You got kids, they come home from school. You can arrange things so that you're home working remotely when they get home. You don't have to worry about daycare. Less anxiety and stress due to traffic, and no need to plan for long commutes. Sometimes a commute can take a few hours. When I first moved to Chicago years ago, well, it wasn't my first time, it's like my second time moving there, but I lived on the south side for the first month, but I was looking for an apartment and employment on the north side, and it was a 3-hour commute one way. I'd spend 6 hours a day in traffic. That's a pretty hellacious commute. Now think if I had to do that every day for my job. Let's talk about the environmental benefits. Less pollution because people are driving to work less. And you also reduce the oil dependency problem. People don't need to fill up their cars as much. Now, there are some problems with telecommuting, and Byers and Stanbury discussed the problems associated with this form of work, and they include less face-to-face collaboration. Collaboration is best with employees. ANC. Can. It's supposed to be can. I'm gonna have to fix that. Anyway, that was a nice typo. When employees can contribute face to face, they can give ideas and get feedback, And when we communicate with each other, only part of what our actually message is actual words. The rest is nonverbal cues. You're going to miss that in a text message. You're going to miss that in an email. And in video conferencing, you get some of it, but not much. Okay. So collaboration is better face to face. There is a difficulty in establishing and maintaining corporate culture. We've talked about corporate culture. That's very difficult to try to establish and maintain remotely. Managers have difficulties monitoring the work. If I need to be monitoring your work, not necessarily being a micromanager, but if we got to make sure for a quality assurance that the work you're doing meets certain specifications, doing more remote work, it makes it very difficult to do that. Now, there's privacy concerns. Privacy concerns, one that we experienced today. Vios came to class early. I was on a Zoom meeting with a different student from another class, and I had to ask Vios if he could step out and close the door so I could have my meeting. When you're working remotely, you got to make sure that the environment is secure so no sensitive or confidential information gets out. So you got to be really careful about that. When I was doing my research for my dissertation, I had to make sure that if I was doing interviews over the phone for my data collection, I had to make sure that the person felt safe in the environment they were in discussing the things we were going to be talking about. And then I had to make sure that I was alone and people couldn't hear what I was saying, because you got to maintain confidentiality. You find that there's difficulty connecting with clients and customers, especially in the medical field. Now, there is telemedicine and telehealth, I think is what they call it. But you're not getting that one-to-one interaction with a physician. I got treated for pink eye a couple of years ago using telehealth, and it went smooth, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with most problems doing it remotely like that, because that person isn't necessarily going to be able to see what's going on in my eye. So some things it works, some things it doesn't. Security concerns for law enforcement staff. When I worked in law enforcement, they were responsible to make sure we were safe at work. That is very difficult to do if your people work remotely. How can you make sure that this person who's working a call center job for law enforcement is safe? If their neighbors find out what they do, maybe they talk about it too much and somebody who is a criminal attacks them. So you got to think about the safety of your employees. And research has indicated that the most significant factor is managerial bias. A lot of managers attain their position the old way. Well, we never did it this way before. And they're resistant to change. They want to cling to the status quo, the old way of doing things. Now, there's a time and a place to return to the old format, but there's a time and a place to embrace the new format. And we've got to be able to do so ethically, responsibly. There are ethical challenges. Your textbook pointed out that trust is difficult to cultivate in a remote setting. As a leader, I have a very hard time building up a significant level of trust with a team that I'm working with remotely. In person, it's easier to do. The position should be categorized as being suitable for remote work instead of being just permitting it on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so you all work for me. Christina and Vios, they come to me, they say, we want to work remote. I should not just say, okay, that's fine. I need to look at the job they do and see, is it feasible for them to work remotely? And do I have to be concerned about their safety? Do I have to monitor their work? Do I got to do quality assurance checks on their work? What do we have to do? What kind of interaction do we have to have in order for their job to be able to be completed? That's the criteria I need to be looking at. And codes of conduct need to reflect the organization's expectations for remote employees. Things such as privacy, confidentiality, clocking in. How do you know that the people that once they sign in for the day, that they're actually doing their job? Maybe they're sitting around in their pajamas playing games, eating cereal. How do we verify to make sure that person is doing what they're supposed to? We got to put that in the code of conduct. We have to find ways of making sure that these remote employees are earning the money they are being paid. There are delicate factors surrounding employee motivation and an effective work-life balance, and these are critical for leaders to consider in their decisions to move remote work from a traditional setting to a remote setting. Are you going to be able to keep your employees motivated, focused, satisfied, engaged? Or are you going to have new issues arise and it's going to be difficult? Maybe instead of taking the whole department and making it remote, maybe start with 1 or 2 people. Do a test run. And if that works, maybe develop a team that's remote and do it that way to make sure that you overcome some of these hurdles before they become too big. Organizations must effectively train remote workers to facilitate better communication, time management, and security issues, such as dealing with organizational information, confidential information, or the customer's private information. It is easy to forget you work for a company when you're just sitting in your living room. You have to find a way to keep your people, your employees, focused that they are an employee and that they owe a duty to that company. Now, let's look at the traditional approach to workplaces. Your textbook noted that the common approach to designing a workspace has been to create an atmosphere conducive to productivity. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, they were making factories that were conducive to producing, but not to the individual employee's health, welfare, well-being. The modern workplace is designed with ergonomics in mind. These chairs that you have here, thought went into them. Are they going to support your back? Are they going to be comfortable for sitting in for an hour and a half at a time? We don't want you to have chairs that are uncomfortable after the first 2 minutes. You're not going to learn. You're not going to retain the information. You're not going to excel as a student. Internal mobility is also a factor. Can employees move around the facility for meetings with the equipment they require? Can I grab my laptop and go to the meeting? Do I have a laptop provided by the organization? Or a phone provided by the organization? Or do I have to use my own? Now, you save money by having the employees use their own technology, but you open yourself up to security violations, data breaches, all kinds of problems. That's why a lot of companies will provide a phone, a computer, things like that, because they can actually make sure that the software is on there to keep their proprietary information safe. And the workplace as a campus. This has been an approach that's been coming around. It's been being done, and your textbook noted that a workplace campus is created similarly to the way a college or university campus is. Some organizations have begun constructing apartments either on the campus or nearby. There is a resort down in Austin. It's a fun type of casino type place, I want to say, with slides. And anyway, it's some sort of fun place, and it's expensive to stay there. They bring employees from around the world, but they have apartments located right next to the facility. What they're doing is they're providing places for these people to live. Now, it does save the company some money when you think about it, because they're not having to pay so that person can live out in town, but they have to pay for that apartment and the utilities and stuff like that. So they're still paying, but it brings their people close by. The people don't have to commute. Some organizations will even provide an on-site cafeteria offering healthy dining choices. Some will have a store. But wait a minute, this isn't new. It is, but not really. The old company town approach is where they got this idea. And historically, many companies built small towns for their businesses. So we want to have a business, we choose an area, we actually build a town as a company. These were complete with housing, stores, and entertainment, restaurants, even schools for children. All the amenities were owned by the company, which meant that they were able to increase their profit margin. This model declined due to affordable automobiles. When people were able to start buying more affordable modes of transportation, they didn't have to live so close to the factory they worked at. And as seen on the previous slide, there is a move to update the approach that a company takes, and they're kind of using this town model as larger organizations begin to develop workplace campuses with housing and restaurants and entertainment and gyms and daycare and schools and stuff like that. Is that a good thing? It sounds like it. But wait a minute. Everything's always got a different another side to that equation there. The ever-elusive work-life balance. Your textbook noted that 25% of American employees have increased stress due to trying to manage work and home responsibilities. So maybe this campus idea reduces some of that stress. That's a benefit. A lack of work-life balance can lead to physical and mental health issues. The return to the company town model through they're expanding the workplace campus is an attempt to reduce some of these factors. Yet, as you're going to see in a minute, you're actually increasing the work-life balance stress and problems in another way. You're solving some problems by creating this modified, modern approach to a company town. But now your employees almost become more like servants, slaves. This creates a situation where the employee may feel obligated to work longer hours, may be required to work longer hours because, hey, we're giving you a place to live. We're giving you a town for you and your family. So you owe us overtime and we're not going to pay you for it because we're already giving you all this. So see, this idea, this approach does reduce some of that work-life balance stress problems, some of those problems, but it also adds others at the same time. A coin always has two sides. There's a good side and a bad side, typically to everything. And we have to weigh this out as a company and as employees. Is the good worth the bad? Let's talk about the ethics of this workplace campus approach. Byers and Stanbury brought up several ethical concerns that this model presents. Will organizational leaders and managers become city officials? You see, in a city, your city officials are elected officials. The citizens vote them into place. In a company town or the campus approach, the senior leadership almost becomes de facto city officials. They're not elected. How will these campuses function within the actual city they are a part of? Palo Alto, California has got tons of technological companies. You got Apple and Google and all those people out there, right? Well, some of these companies are building these campuses. So it's a town within a town. What kind of problems are there? Fire department, police department. Who responds to emergencies? How are taxes paid? Garbage collected? How does the water get from point A to point B? How do we charge for that? There are a lot of things that have to be dealt with when you're building up a workplace campus. And what about zoning? A lot of cities, they got these ordinances on zoning. Are they having to develop new ones? Because now you've got this new sort of business. It's an apartment. It's a store. It's a medical clinic. It's a school. It's also a manufacturing plant. How do you zone it? What do you put it under? You can't put it under just a manufacturing plant because it also has a school and a medical clinic. How do you zone it? This is where I was wanting to insert some videos. But what I'm going to do is we'll watch those on Wednesday when I'm down to just using one computer. It'll make it easier. And also, if I play it on the big screen here and on my computer, there's going to be an echo or reverb situation, and the people online won't be able to hear anything. And so we'll just wait for those till Wednesday. So in the next lecture, we are going to continue the discussion on the future of modern workplaces. We'll be doing that on Zoom Wednesday. And does anybody have any questions or anything they want to contribute to this? Any thoughts on the subject? Anybody online have anything they want to throw on the table? I think that there is a positive side to a workplace campus. But I think that the danger is that if the senior leadership is unethical, they will abuse the employee's proximity to that business. They'll abuse the fact of what they've given the employees. And so there is a very positive side to it, but it requires that the senior leadership, all forms of leadership in that company, in that organization, are ethical. That they think about the individual needs of people and their families, not just about the bottom dollar and the profit of the organization. I think there's a lot more to be concerned about as a leader in that sort of situation. Because now I'm taking the responsibility to make sure we have doctors on site, teachers on site, waste removal, all these things, security, police, fire. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea, but it has to be approached cautiously, soberly, as they would say. All right. On that note, we are going to end today's lecture. Keep up with your working canvas this week. And remember, week 16, there are no late assignments. So the last day of class by 11:59 p.m. that night, if you haven't turned in your assignment, you ain't getting graded for it. So make sure that every other week you can turn things in late. You get docked some points, but you can. But that's 1 week in classes you can't. So you all have a great, wonderful day. I'll see you Wednesday.
You too, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Have a
Hello.
good day online, people.
Thank you.
My mom.